Hello, my unique students. How are you doing? I hope you are having a wonderful moment at home. This is your government teacher, Mr. Amanam Ikbe. You are welcome to this e-teaching and learning process. The first topic is on local government administration in Nigeria. And in this lesson, I have 4 behavioral objectives. In other words, what you must know at the end of this lesson. Number 1, you must be able to define local governments in clear terms. Number 2, you must be able to state 5 functions of local government. 3, justify 4 sources of finance for local government. 4, outline 4 problems of local government. Before I jump into the definition of local government, I would like to remind you about the topic on federalism. I told you that federalism is a system of governments whereby powers and authorities are shared among the 3 levels of government, namely the federal, the state, and the local government. And here we are going to look at the local government as a separate entity. What is local government? Local government may be defined as a government established through an act at the local level and to deal with specific matters as it affects them. The rationale for the creation of local government is to involve local and active participation in the affairs of their country. From this definition, it is emphatically clear that local government is created by an act, by the law. It has the backing of the law. It is a legitimate entity. It is an authority institutionalized by the law to administer, to regulate, to coordinate and organize the affairs of the people at the local level. And don't forget, the local government is also known as the third tier of government, or it is alternatively known as the grassroots government, because this is a platform whereby people are encouraged to participate in the day-to-day running of the government. It brings the people closer to the government, to the central government. So local government in this context is very, very significant. Now, what are the functions of local government? Number 1 is that the establishment and maintenance of cemeteries and homes for the destitute. They establish and maintain cemeteries and homes for the destitute. Cemetery is where people are buried, and homes for destitute is a place meant for the poor. The local government play this function. Number 2, collection of rates, radio as well as television license. They perform this function. They collect rates and also issue out license to radio and television corporations. Number 3, establishment and maintenance and regulation of markets, motor parks, and public convenience. They make law, they establish and make law, and also maintain the operation of markets, the operation of motor parks, and other public convenience. This is one of the functions of a local government. Number 4 is that they construct roads and construction and maintenance of roads, streets, drains, parks, and so on. They construct roads. This responsibility is not left for the state and federal governments alone. The local governments also perform this function, creation of and construction of roads. Sometimes they embark on trying to cover up the potholes on major rural roads, the streets, and so on. They maintain them. Number 5, local governments are involved in the registration of death and marriages in their area of authority. They embarked on the registration of birth and death rates in their locality. They work hand in hand with the National Population Commission to keep records and proper documentation of these death and birth rates. Number 6, participate in the provision and maintenance of primary education. They provide primary education, that is the primary schools. They provide maybe teaching equipment, they build classrooms, and also attend to other needs or problems at the primary school level in their locality. Number seven, provision and maintenance of healthcare services. In all the local governments, we have primary healthcare services that are given to people. In that case, local governments also play the part of trying to maintain them, provide medicines, drugs, give people medical attention and assistance at the primary healthcare centers. Finally, naming of streets, roads, and to number houses. This is one of the functions of the local government. They give names to streets. They also give names to roads, and also number people's houses. This is the function played by the local government. The next subheading is sources of finance for local government, where they get their money from. The money they get to embark on developmental programs and projects. Number one is that the National Assembly, that is the Senate and the House of Representatives, as well as state houses of assembly, make provision for statutory allocation of public revenue to local government council. That means the legislative arm of government, that is and the National Assembly and the state houses of assembly, they make laws that will enable local governments have a certain amount of money, maybe on monthly basis, for their projects. So they get their monthly, or they have their source of finance from the local, they have their source of finance from the national and the state house of assembly. Number two is grants. They receive special grants from both the federal and state government for specific projects. There is a particular sum of money that is meant for developmental purposes at the local level. This money is known as grant. The state government do give this money to the local government, and the federal government, on the other hand, also make provision for grants so that the local government will be able to do and attain to their basic needs at the local level. Collection of tax. The tax collected by the local government is also a source of revenue to them. They get tax from radio, television, market, shops, and the money they get from the license they issue to all these corporations and all these organizations are also used to finance the activities of the local level. It's also a source of finance for the local government. People pay tax for the government organizations, even non-governmental organizations pay tax to the local government, and as such, it becomes a source of revenue to the local government. Number four, local governments are involved in commercial ventures like transportation. They embark on transportation. Some local government have vehicles that move people from one place to another, and money from this activity is used to solve one or two problems of the local government. Payment of fines by those who violate rules and regulation is one of the sources of finance for the local government. People that violate the bylaws made by the local, don't forget, laws made by the local government is known as bylaws. So people that violate these rules and regulations are forced to pay fine. This money from this fine is used to develop the local government. The next subheading is problems of local government. What are the problems faced by contemporary local governments in Nigeria? Inadequate or shortage of trained personnel. Some local government workers are not well equipped educationally, technically, or otherwise. So as such, it becomes a problem. Number two, lack of sufficient fund. Inadequate money. They don't have sufficient money to embark on developmental projects, and this is a problem. Number three is political interference with the activities of local governments. It is very, very clear that high-placed government functionaries from the federal and state level of government do impose or interfere in the activities of the local government, and as such it is not healthy for our democracy. It is a problem to local government administration. The local people should be allowed to be actively involved in the activities. There should be no interference, and when there is an interference it becomes a problem and it affects the day-to-day running of the local government, and it leads to political apathy, and it becomes a problem. Bribery and corruption is also a major problem, whereby people are involved in dishonest activities and so on. Embezzlement and misappropriation of public funds is also a problem. Embezzlement means a situation whereby a public office holder at the local government level will use public money for his private, to solve his private problem. That's what we mean by embezzlement, using public fund. Then misappropriation in this context has to do with a situation whereby the money is not channeled, a particular sum of money is not channeled to the area of need. That is what we call misappropriation. Money is not directed to the area of concern. The next one, number 6, is nepotism and favoritism. This means granting undue favor. This is when the imposition of mediocrity comes into play because of the fact that somebody is close to a highly placed personnel at the federal or state level. He will now give him or her contract, and as such there is room for corruption. Even when the person is misbehaving, is indisciplined, is not conforming to the ethics of the job, he will not be questioned. So nepotism and favoritism is a critical problem that needs to be looked into the local government administration. Number 7, infrastructural dereliction and dilapidation. This is a situation whereby there is poor road networks. The local government administration, they lack a platform or buildings in order to, or institutions are not created. Infrastructural buildings, things like buildings, roads, structures, offices are not put in place for the administration of local government. That if you go to some local governments in Nigeria, you realize that the local government secretariat has exceeded its lifespan. You have dilapidated buildings, structures, offices, and so on. You have bad roads. So this is also a problem to the administration of local government. The last one is lack of telecommunication and backwardness in industrialization. We are in a digital dispensation, and as such some local governments are not well equipped in this context. They don't have the appropriate, or they don't have the scientific, or there is in provision is not meant for them to be connected to the internet in order to be linked, to have a link with the center, that is the central and the state government, and they don't have the appropriate device to store information or to receive information, and as such they are backward in technology. So this is a problem to local government administration. That is the end of the class. The evaluation, here you have 4 questions here in the evaluation. This question is to justify that you have achieved the stated behavioral objectives. 1, you must be able to define local government. Define local government. Outline 5 functions of local government. State 4 sources of finance for local government. Finally, justify 4 problems affecting the local government in Nigeria. Thank you very much for giving me your audience. Bye for now.